Do you remember having that perfect flow day where everything was going according to plan? Whether that be reading that book and internalizing everything that was useful to you, whether that be going to basketball practice and improving with every drill you did, or even after work where you felt like you accomplished a lot and got better at work today. Don't you want to be in the zone like that at all times? This video is for someone who still wants to learn. That could be learn a new skill such as a language or even some communication strategies, or just for school, trying to get better at learning. But today I'm going to help you actually expedite the learning process and make sure you can retain the information that you learned for a lifetime if it's useful to you. Sound like a plan? Welcome. I'm Sunny from Sunny Talks, and this is a channel where we talk about how we can become better versions of ourselves. I had undiagnosed ADHD earlier in my life and went through a lot of rough patches because of it, especially in India, where I was even physically abused for not paying attention or failing to concentrate at the task ahead of me. I was just told by my teachers to work harder, focus more, and pay attention, even though it was clearly not working. However, I got reinforced to this idea of just working harder throughout the rest of my life. Unfortunately, because of this, I was actually able to become a registered nurse in Canada. It wasn't until I continued my learning by studying for the medical college admissions test here in Canada where I recognized that something was wrong with my attention. And then I got diagnosed with ADHD. So now I have been empowered to actually manage my symptoms of ADHD without medication, and just watch the last 3 videos of mine to see how I did that. Now I am a reader. I actually consume and digest information very quickly and even omit information that is not useful to me. So what do we know about learning? Do we learn to evolve, to change, to better ourselves? Hell yes, to all of those things. So I will cut the crap now and get straight to the point of what I'm making this video on. How to learn faster and also retain this information for the rest of your lives. Doesn't matter if you're learning a new skill, learning for your exams, or just learning new strategies for work. This can be applied to everything where you can learn faster and retain it for the rest of your life. There are 2 aspects to this video. The very first one is to learn quickly and efficiently. And the second aspect is to take that information that you learned from your short-term memory and put it into your long-term memory. All right, so the very first thing, to learn faster. Andrew Huberman and other neuroscientists talk about this method to learn. That is called the Engage and Disengage method. So in order to really understand the Engage and Disengage method, you have to really understand 3 neurotransmitters. The very first one is the focus neurotransmitter, which is acetylcholine. So this allows for you to focus, also allows the synapses between your neurons to happen so that you can actually have some learning taking place. This is a neurotransmitter that coffee prevents the breakdown of so that you can actually focus for a longer period of time. And also nicotine is also something that you can use to increase your acetylcholine neurotransmitter. So the second one that I want you to focus on is norepinephrine. So norepinephrine is also a cousin of epinephrine, which are both adrenaline hormones. So as you can tell, these are the ones that are for fight and flight, start getting focused, put your attention on something, arousal, all that stuff. So very important for learning as well, especially in the initial phases where you get that stress and you're ready to learn. So it's actually, norepinephrine plays a big role in learning towards a deadline as well. When you have a deadline, your norepinephrine levels get risen up and you're really ready to attack that learning that's about to take place. So the third neurotransmitter I want to talk about is dopamine. Dopamine is the one that we love the most. It's the one that actually buffers acetylcholine levels so that they don't get to a level where you're kind of burnt out and you want to just stop studying. And the second thing it does is actually synergistically works with norepinephrine. So they both complement each other and allow you to learn longer and sustain that learning for a longer period of time as well. So now let's put this into the active engagement component. So there are 2 study methods that you can implement to either learn a skill or whatever you're trying to learn. The very first one is Pomodoro method. So that's where you take 25 minutes of active engagement in the material you're trying to learn and then 5-minute breaks afterwards. So you engage for 25 minutes and then disengage for 5. I do not like this method just because it takes me a long time to learn something, and if I'm warmed up in like 10 minutes, then 15 minutes isn't enough for me to continue learning. So that's why I don't like this method. The second method that Andrew Huberman recommends and many other individuals recommend is the 90 minutes of deep work with 20-minute break after the deep work. I love this method because During the 90 minutes, you can also implement something that's very interesting. What I mean by that is you can do short spontaneous pauses that Andrew Huberman actually recommends. So while you're doing the 90-minute bout of deep work, whenever you feel a little overwhelmed, just sit there idly and not do anything. So what I like to usually say here is be still, be present. However, if you still feel like you cannot just sit there, use this breathing technique that Andrew Huberman recommends, where you inhale and then do another extra inhale upon your first inhale and then exhale very slowly. We can do this together right now. Ready? So this actually really relaxes you as well and gets you in the moment. So for those 30 seconds bouts that you can do spontaneously in between the 90 minutes, you can do this breathing exercise. So you must be thinking, I told you the methods of how to study, but what about the neurotransmitters that I mentioned earlier? To initially get started with your study session of that first 20-minute bout, your norepinephrine and acetylcholine will be enough to just get you through it. And then after that, you can partially renew that by taking that break. But if you want to take that to the next level of renewing your resources of norepinephrine and acetylcholine to the next level, start implementing dopamine here. So how can you actually increase your dopamine levels for these study sessions? So Ali Abdaal actually says there's 3 P's that you can implement. The very first P is play. So how can you start playing with the material that you're learning right now? So you can make it into a game or even start visualizing it in a way that's kind of like a movie or something. So this is one way you can implement play into it. The second thing you can actually do is empower yourself. So that second P is power. So empower yourself to the schedule that you're about to make. Because if you can do that, so you can either choose the Pomodoro method or the Andrew Huberman method, and whichever one you choose, you're the one that made the decision, so you feel in power of it. And also, if you want to stop in between it as well, that's fine. That allows you to stay in power. And that's what we love to be in, power. So this is a way you can implement power as well. And the third P that you can implement is people. So when I used to actually study for the MCAT the first time around, I studied by myself and it was extremely boring. It was really hard to grasp the concepts and I was only studying stuff that I was already good at. I wasn't able to tackle things that I was weak at. So what I started doing is the second time around, I studied with someone and this made it a lot more fun. We would go to university. They would help me with the topics that I was weak at and I would help them with topics that they were weak at. And we really made it into a game. We got very competitive. We got in a positive way. We got very competitive where like we would compare scores. We would challenge each other and it was a lot more fun that way. So if you're at work and you want to employ the third P, build those relationships with the people you work with. It's very hard to work with people that you don't like. So try to build a relationship, try to understand their perspectives. And this will help a lot in the journey for dopamine and being happy in the pursuit of what you're doing. So now we talked about the neurotransmitters and the methods of studying, but how do you actually engage with the material now? Right? Let's talk about that. So when I talk about engagement, it doesn't mean just learning the material and finding examples for it. That's not enough. Even Jim Kwik here says, in reality, cramming is associated with emotional, mental, and physical impairments that reduce the body's ability to cope with its environment. So if you're cramming information, you're not able to critically think about that information. You're not really applying that information. So it's not going to really retain in your memory. So instead, what you can do is firstly, employ active recall. So whenever you study some material and find examples for it, put the book down and then just repeat all of that to yourself. Teach it to yourself. And then do this 4 times is what Jim Kwik actually recommends. And along with active recall, another thing you can do is active testing. So when I was first studying for the MCAT, I just studied all the material over and over again. And I never really applied it until the actual MCAT. It wasn't at the level that I wanted it to be. And also, I forgot all the material that I had learned. However, the second time what I did was actually actively tested my knowledge. So think about it. You learn a concept, and if you go online and you just test it over and over again from different angles, you will know the concept from every angle and you will not forget it. I still remember all the concepts from my MCAT studying, and that was 2 years ago from now. That's how powerful this studying method is. So actively test your knowledge about the material with different ways. So if you use these methods to study, first of all, you will study faster, and secondly, you will retain the information for a longer period of time. Unlike before, where you would just cram the night before and forget the stuff after the exam, or you would forget it a month after the exam. So this is a way that you can remember the information for a longer period of time. Lastly, in order to learn faster, you also have to be in the right state of mind. What I mean by that is stay away from instant dopamine, such as sugary foods, scrolling on TikTok, drugs, and things of that sort. All of this would just negatively compound and affect your state of mind for learning in a negative way. Instead, chase slow dopamine, such as sunlight in the morning, such as meditation, doing those journaling sessions, having those laughs with your family, going out for dinner with family, obviously eating healthy food. But all of those things will compound and put you in a state of mind where your memory is going to get better. You'll be able to learn information at the moment quicker as well. So now let's go to the part 2 of this video. Remember what you read and learn. So now let's take this short-term information and put it into your long-term. So you already know how to learn faster, but how do you retain this information for the rest of your life? So the very first thing that you have to do is get your 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep regularly, especially after learning, because your memory is not going to form if you're not sleeping, and that's a proven fact. And now I want to talk about the forgetting curve after 24 hours of learning a material. Learners will rapidly lose their memory of learned knowledge in a matter of days or weeks, unless the information is consciously reviewed. So it is projected that you will lose about 85 to 90% of the information you just learned in a matter of 24 hours. That's exactly what happens when you cram prior to exam and then let go of the material, because then you forget it all after the exam. So what can you do here to prevent this? As it said, consciously recall the material. So you can do spaced repetition here. The one way that I employed spaced repetition was for actually my MCAT as well. When I was studying material that I was weak at, it was hard for me to grasp some concepts, so I made an Anki card for it. So it's basically a flashcard that you make, and then you put it into an app called Anki Deck. They repeat each of the cards that you had as a weakness over and over again. First, they'll bring it to you every 2-3 hours, and then later on, it'll be like every second day, third day. And with this spaced repetition, you prevent the forgetting curve, and you retain this information for a very long time. So instead of the way that we used to learn, where you would take notes and then just get tested on those notes in the future, what you can do is take the notes, reflect on those notes in a journal, or just after learning them. Like I said, active recall, and then you can have spaced repetition. So for instance, you can have it with the Anki Deck that I was talking about, or even something as simple as just having flashcards. You can also just do something as simple as flashcards. I know I was watching a video of Matthew Davella with Ryan Holiday, and they were just talking about how he would just use flashcards to remember material, and that's a great way of doing it too, because he's taking advantage of spaced repetition. If you want to actually take this information to a next level, you can actually personalize it to yourself too when you're creating the Anki Deck or that flashcard. You can personalize it yourself with a visualization. So if you're learning something about the sun, maybe you can visualize yourself with a day on the sun and then having a stream of that information just going to the sun. I don't know. You can do something like that and it will work. So in order to really learn faster and retain the information longer, you have to give it attention. As Jim Kwik says, the secret of a good memory is attention, and attention to a subject depends upon our interest to it. We rarely forget that which has made a deep impression on our minds. So as we talked about the flashcards, if you put it together with something that's very meaningful to you, you won't forget it. All those emotional memories that you have in the past, the reason that they're so vivid to you is because they meant a lot to you. So if you can put more attention onto a subject, you won't forget that material as well. Bring some emotion into your studying. Have some tools such as having mnemonic devices or just visualizing the whole process of what you're studying. So if you like that video, please subscribe and also share it with friends and family that might be struggling with their current studying methods. And I hope to see you in the next video.